the Dialed In Angling podcast presented by OnX Fish, Arneson's Rocky Point Resort, Strike Master, and 13 Fishing. Well, welcome back to this week's podcast. April Fools, everybody. You know, Minnesota is doing its thing that it does every spring, and that it gives us this shimmer of hope that summer is coming, spring is here, and then boom, in the blink of an eye, we're right back to winter. We know as Minnesotans and people in the Midwest, hardcore Minnesotans know that spring can be challenging, not only just, you know, physically, but mentally as well, you know, preparing yourself for these big spring snowstorms. But make no mistake about it, spring is coming. Summer will be here shortly. And there's a lot of things I want to talk about in this podcast, particularly open water locations, techniques with those open water areas. You know, I want to go pick up my boat right now. I want to get my boat ready. I know a lot of people that are getting their boats ready for spring. Last week, I saw when it was 50, 60, 70 degrees in the Twin Cities, buddies that were hauling their boats home from winter storage, getting it ready for the spring. I really want to go get my boat right now, but seeing we just had a bunch of snow last night, we got more coming this weekend. I think I'll wait till next week till the roads clear a little bit. Nothing makes you more sick than hauling your boat down the road, even with a cover on it, to have it completely encompassed in ice and salt and snow. It just drives me absolutely bonkers. You know, to see something that you value and treasure so much to have that much salt on it just drives me crazy. But hey, let's get into these topics. You know, bear with me a little bit. I've had a cold. I got a cold when I was on spring break with my family. You know, coming home just the other day, I couldn't believe all the lakes that were out in the Twin Cities. It got me fired up to talk about some spring fishing. Before we get into the spring fishing topic, though, I want to cover a couple topics that were covered at the Minnesota DNR meetings that happened in Brainerd. If you haven't heard, they had some meetings in the Brainerd area just last week covering a wide variety of topics in Minnesota. I was not at the meeting, unfortunately, because I was on spring break, but I did talk to a couple friends of mine that were at the meetings, and they kind of clued me in on, you know, what took place, what were kind of the hot button items at the meeting, which is interesting to me because you know, obviously I make my living on the water in Minnesota, but also I've said it on this podcast a million times. I care about our resources. I want to make sure that we have really good fishing in Minnesota for the rest of my life, but also my kids' lives and my grandkids' lives, you know, eventually if I have an opportunity with grandkids. So I just want good fishing opportunities for everybody in the state. I love fishing. I've always loved fishing. I'm hooked on fishing, or I got hooked on fishing as a kid in Minnesota because we have such great resources. I grew up on a lake river system that was phenomenal fishing, not only for northern pike, walleyes, panfish, everything. And so because I had those opportunities as a kid, I am who I am today as a result of it. And so I want to see our fisheries flourish and prosper, not only just having decent fishing. I want really good fishing. And, you know, things have evolved in the fishing world over the last 10 years. As you know, we've talked about it extensively on this podcast, but when it comes to technology for facing sonar. So some of the topics that were brought up at the DNR meeting, obviously, number one headliner would probably be the 4-fish walleye limit in Minnesota, the proposal for a 4-fish walleye limit. It sounds like that thing is getting, you know, some real traction and momentum. Will appear in front of from what I understand, you know, either a judge or mediator type of situation before it would actually go into, you know, a designed law. But right now, it looks like we're headed towards a 4-fish limit for walleyes, not this spring, but possibly for 2027, as early as 2027. And, you know, just reading some of the comments online after the meeting, I noticed there was some people sparking some debates on various forums on Facebook and Instagram. And, you know, I've had people on this podcast, you know, Nate Blazing from the Brainerd Walleye Alliance. I've talked to other guides. I think for the most part, like if you were to take a vote among the guides that I know and the anglers that I know, they would vote for a 4-fish limit based on forward-facing sonar technology, the amount of angling pressure that's out there. Since COVID, I know a lot of people have gone back to work, but there's still a lot of people working online. The ramps are busier during the week than they ever were. It seems like there's more guides out there than I've ever seen throughout my career. And I don't know. I just think the time is right for this 4-fish limit. I'm all for it. I've said it publicly on this podcast. I've said it on others. I've said it on radio stations that have been interviewed and asked about it. I think it's time. 4-fish limit. We can handle it. I think if you go to Leech Lake, if you go to some other lakes that have a 4-fish limit, seem to get plenty of people that still fish those lakes, and those lakes are absolutely flourishing. So a lake like Leech Lake, super popular destination that's had a 4-fish limit for a while. I just think that with the amount of pressure, the amount of guides, forward-facing sonar, the time is right. We've had this 6-fish limit on the books since, the 50s, late 50s, early 60s. And, the time is now. And I would like to be more proactive than reactive on this. I don't want to get to the point where, again, going back to my first statement about really quality fishing in Minnesota, I don't want to get to the point where, we realize that fishing is terrible and we should have done something 10 years ago. Now it's too late. And by the time we have to allocate more money for stocking programs and certain things to rebound our walleye fishing, I just don't want to get to that area. I'd rather see something on the books. I think 4-fish limit is plenty of walleyes to keep, first of all. Like I was saying, a lake like Leech Lake that's flourishing as far as not only good fishing, but flourishing from an economy standpoint, and the resorts are busy and the guides are busy, and it just is a good balance. You look at states around us, Wisconsin's all over the board. A lot of their lakes, 2 to 3 fish limit, depending on where you're going. You go over to North Dakota, it's a 5-fish limit. South Dakota, 4-fish limit. So a lot of Canada, whether you get a sportsman's license or, a conservation license, you're looking at 2 or 4 walleyes that you can harvest. So I think 4-fish limit's perfect. I've seen a lot of different people throw things out there as far as what they want to see for a slot. I like our current slot as it is. 1 over 20, the rest under 20. That allows someone that trophy potential if they'd like. If you get a lake that has just an overwhelming amount of your class of, sometimes we see it a lot in certain lakes where you'll have just a ton of males that are at that 20, 20 and a half, 21. You can harvest one of those and then, keep your unders. From a guy, someone who spends a ton of time on the water guiding, cleaning fish for people. I don't mind cleaning fish. I really don't. I've done it my whole life. But cleaning 4 fish is a lot of walleyes. 4 fish per person is a lot of fish. You start cleaning 6 fish per person, it's an unbelievable amount of walleyes to keep. So I just think the time is now. I know I get the debates of people that say, well, I only fish once a year. It'd be nice to keep 6. I get that. However, there's a lot of other people that fish way more than once a year. And, again, not everyone's harvesting fish every time they go out, me included. I love just going out fishing, talking, what we're going to talk about later in the podcast as far as certain destinations that I'm going to, whether it's Rainy River, whether it's out to Green Bay, North Dakota, South Dakota, whatever. I'm going there for the fishing opportunities and the big fish potential, not to harvest anything. Most of the time when I'm going to these places like the Rainy River, a lot of people are trying to get up there and fish, before things close up, the 14th or whatever. I don't care. I'd like to just go up there and fish. Obviously, I would love to see Rainy River, just like we've not to get sidetracked here, but to go to like a catch and release season only up until opener. That way I could go to the Rainy River anytime I wanted to in the spring. I think something like that would be incredible. But going back to this 4-fish limit conversation, I think the time is now. It was a big topic at the meeting, and you're going to hear more and more about it as, this thing starts to get ratcheted up. Right now it's getting very close to getting put into whatever sort of hoops that it jumps through the state to be made a law and to change the law. And we're getting very close to that. So that's my 2 cents anyway on the 4-fish limit. Not sure how others feel. I obviously there's a few people that feel really strongly. They want to keep it the way it is and the way it's been for a long time. But I think those voices are much less than the rest of the crowd that wants to see this 4-fish limit. I really do. I think we're at a point in time where when we hit that 4-fish limit and it becomes law in the next year or two, which I believe it's going to happen, people are going to be fine with it. And then, it won't be talked about. It'll just be a normal thing. And, something that, that just is just part of it. It's kind of like slot limits. When I was younger, there were so many people that were opposed to slot limits. And I think if you surveyed people now, the majority of people are probably still all for slot limits, especially this 1/20, kind of protecting some of these bigger fish, these big females, and just having a good solid regulation in the lake of, 1/20, the rest under 20. All of Canada, you see a lot of slots, and it's just sort of a normal thing. I think that's where this 4-fish limit's going to get to. So another topic that was covered at the DNR meeting, and again, I wasn't there, but I've heard a lot about it on social media. I wanted to talk about it on this podcast. Again, it sparks some debate among anglers, among the fishing community, whether we should do this or not. I, for one, am all for it. Not to restrict other anglers to go out there and guide, but I'm all for it for the sense that I think that we just need to find out, how many guides are in the state, and we'll get right into it. It's the Minnesota guide license requirements, and nothing is set into law. I wouldn't even say that this conversation is as far as the 4-fish limit conversation, but it certainly was a topic at the DNR meeting. I've seen it on lots of different fishing forums, lots of people discussing this guide license. And, I wanted to talk about it on this podcast. I'm all for it for a couple reasons. One, I just want to see some sort of, credibility or accountability or whatever you'd say for guides in Minnesota, because, you look at states that surround us, whether it's Wisconsin, North Dakota, South Dakota, they all have some sort of guide license requirement, CPR training, first aid, captain's license requirements, whatever the levels of requirements are, drug testing, they check their boats. Some, states that I've fished, like Michigan, the guides actually have like a log that they've got to turn in to fisheries. And if they don't turn that in, they're faced, a series of fines and different things. So there's all sorts of different levels of this. And I kind of want to peel back a few of the layers because, that this could, obviously, because you get government involved with business, there's a lot of debate whether people want to see it or not. For me, I want to see it just like I said. I think there should be some sort of accountability or tracking aspect. And if you're gonna do this full time, or you plan on being a fishing guide in Minnesota, I think there should be certain steps that you have to go through that, require you to be a Minnesota fishing guide and give that level of credibility, legitimacy, what have you. And, I don't know if we need to get to the point where, we got to have these giant, that you got to pay, $1,000 a year or something crazy like that. I just think a guide license that you need to keep up either on an annual basis or every 3 years, you have to renew your license, whatever you have to do. But I think you should require a few minimal things. One, I would say first aid, CPR type of training. You got to have some sort of checklist in your boat as far as what needs to be required as far as safety equipment, whether it's flotation devices, flares, what have you, first aid type of stuff that you are required to have on your boat. And that it has to be, on your boat. If you get checked by, let's say, a conservation officer or something, that you have this on your boat. Secondly, I'm all for like a captain's license. So yes, you have a checklist of safety equipment that you have on your boat, a captain's license, and then, your Minnesota guide license, where every year you're checking off whether it requires a physical or, drug testing. I'm not sure at what level, the DNR is looking at, requiring and not requiring. I'm not saying one way or the other. Yes, I guess I don't want to see like, 100 hoops you have to jump through, but just a very minimal amount of safety equipment, let's say a captain's license, and then, either physical or drug test requirements, that sort of thing. And then that's it. And then you sign up and you're on this list of, certified Minnesota fishing guides. If you decide to keep that up and do it as a career or even part-time, that's up to you. But I just think we're at a point where we need that. And again, I mean, this topic was brought up at the meeting, but not something that looks like it's going to be implemented, in the short term. This is just discussion. I think the DNR already has, certain requirements, obviously, for Great Lakes and some different bodies of water that, it's required on navigable water, whether you're on the Rainy River, Mississippi, already require a guide license or, like a 6-pack captain's license. So there are some requirements there, but I would love to see just an overall legitimate Minnesota guide license. And I know, again, this sparks a lot of debate because there's certain anglers out there that are probably listening to this saying, a guide license or the government getting involved, that's just more taxation, right? That's just more of a tax that I got to deal with, something I have to deal with as a guide, as someone that makes their living on the water. And I get that argument of it. But on the flip side of this, I'm not looking at, these crazy rates as far as charging guides, thousands of dollars, just, some sort of guide fee and then a license. And like I said, safety equipment, Coast Guard license, all of this stuff. So we have legitimate guides on the water. And, again, it adds this legitimacy level to guiding in Minnesota. Every other state requires it. A lot of other states around us, you have to have a guide license. And, it sort of separates, people that do it full time and as a career than, the rest of the people. And so that's how I feel. And yes, it's easy for me to say it because I am a full-time guide and I've been doing it for a long time, but I've felt this way for a really long time, that we should have, some sort of requirements like others do. A lot of my buddies from other states, they're like, Minnesota doesn't require a guide license. Like, no, nothing. You could come over and guide if you'd like to. And they're shocked that we don't have some sort of system in place. And so, yes, I'm all for it. Love to see it. Again, it was a topic that was brought up, and I think it should be revisited. And, if people ask my opinion, that's going to be my opinion, as I feel like we need something in place. We're at the time and the point where there's enough people guiding, there's enough people with boats out there, there's enough people with forward-facing sonar. We need some sort of accountability, some credibility to what we do, legitimacy, whatever you call it, and the time is now. All right, let's step away from all of the regulation talks, the guide license talks, the 4-fish limit. I want to get into some open water conversations, some techniques, some locations in which I'll be going here very shortly. And I can't wait to get out there. Man, I have spring fever like you can't believe. It's always, anytime I go on spring break and I come back, you always want to come back to warm weather in Minnesota. I was a little bit jealous when I was gone this week. It was 50, 60, 70 degrees. I saw people ice fishing. I saw people in open water down towards the Twin Cities. I saw people on Red Wing. Social media is obviously filled with everybody running up to the Rainy River or going to Red Wing or Green Bay or Lake Erie. Chamberlain, I am absolutely jealous and envy. And while I was on spring break, I just wanted to be home so I could go fishing and get my boat ready. And so here we are. So let's get into some open water discussion, talk a little bit about technique, some of the first locations that I'm going to be going. First and foremost, the Rainy River. Can't wait to get up there. Birchdale and Frontier are open right now, and they'll start opening more and more. Hopefully, the snowfall isn't going to impact the runoff and that we can have a little bit of clean water while we're up there fishing. Nothing worse than your plans of going to Rainy River and all of a sudden it just turns muddy and nasty and nothing you can do about it. But that hasn't been the case quite yet. And so, yeah, let's just cross our fingers and hope that, this melt is slow enough that you don't get that great big rush of dirty, dark water as soon as the big fork breaks free and ruins fishing on the Rainy. But as of right now, things are good. People are getting some really big walleyes right now. I can't wait to get up there. One of my favorite techniques is obviously the dragging plastics. Last couple of years, especially last year when I was up there, dragging Crush City Mayors. I like using the bigger size, like the 4 inchers, and like on a 1/2 ounce jig, if you can get like a sleek jig and a 3/8 or 1/2 ounce, and really not putting a ton of action on the bait, just literally dragging paddle tails on the bottom up there and absolutely crushing them. And it's sort of nice with forward facing sonar, getting on the edges of those fish and dragging those baits through those fish. Man, nothing better than seeing a great big Rainy River walleye come to the surface when you're up there. Those pre-spawners are absolutely beautiful. Coming out of Lake of the Woods, the small heads, the big giant bodies. I will definitely be up there in the next week or so. I'm hoping to do a podcast from up there. That's my goal. So Rainy River is always on my list. Obviously, I've been doing it since I was a kid. I love running up there, not just for the walleyes, but the sturgeon fishing as well. My son and his buddies have really gotten into sturgeon fishing over the last few years. So, I promised them a trip this year. So I'm going to hopefully next week try to sneak in a walleye trip up there, even if it's cold and nasty. I got to drag my boat through the snow and ice. I don't care. I just want to get up there and fish. And then, if the weather breaks a little bit, it gets a little bit warmer, I think I'll go back up for another sturgeon trip, a little bit later in the season, maybe in a week or so. But doing both up there is really fun. It's sort of the kind of the spring is here type of goal. I always have destinations on the books for spring, and the Rainy River is always at the top of my list. And so, if you're heading up there, highly recommend, bring in some plastics with you. Yes, grab some frozen shiners as well. There's times where they just want meat laying on the bottom. Rippin' wraps are another great option. Some of the custom color rippin' wraps, I've done very, very well on rippin' wraps and even jigging wraps, and also trolling. There was so many times back in the day where, prior to forward facing sonar, the fish weren't going and we would troll, just bottom bouncers and stick baits, or even just, deep diving crankbaits or lead core, and did quite well. But you have to get up there and see some of those pre-spawned fish. It's crazy on forward facing sonar how many fish are actually packed into the sections of river on the Rainy River. And it's just really, really cool to see. Another destination that I will hopefully be getting out to very quickly is Green Bay. I'm starting to see some good photos and things coming from Green Bay. My buddy Chris out there. I've seen a few posts of his of sliding great big walleyes off the backside of his boat. Made me jealous when I was on vacation. Again, a really good rip and wrap destination using custom colors. That's where I fell in love with pitching and jigging rip and wraps, was out in Green Bay. But it seemed like over the last few years, it seems like the rip and wrap bite was better a little bit later. When we were out there last year, it was all hair jigs. They just wanted it laying on the bottom, like barely moving a hair jig, using sort of that quick strike or that stinger hook on there. VMC has some new bucktail jigs that are out this year in that kind of that black and purple Anything black and purple out there is absolutely deadly. That hair jig combination of that black and purple is just hard to beat. Sometimes you get a black and purple with a little bit of gold in there, but any of that sort of combination, they absolutely love it out there. I've fished a lot of different rip and wrap colors out there, but it seems like the clearer the water, the more they like those really, really dark baits. It seems like if the water gets a little more dirty, a little more churned up, you can get away with using some more, vibrant baits, some of the more, like UV baits from VMC and that sort of thing. But for the most part, the last few years, the water's been super, super clear out there. I mean, you can almost see the bottom in 3, 4, 5 feet. You get out off a shore where it's really clear, you could see down 14, 15 feet. So it just gives you perspective how clear Green Bay has gotten, obviously with zebra mussels. And if you don't have a ton of runoff, last year was the case where the water was way, way down and there was barely any river runoff. So any of that stuff along the shoreline was really, really clear. I'm hoping this year, it looks like they got some rain. They're going to get some more this week. That might dirty up the water a little bit, should make the fishing really good. If you get a big rush of water coming into that Green Bay, it's amazing how those walleyes can feel that with their lateral line, that current, and they find those tributaries, they find those rivers, they make their way up towards those areas, and it's phenomenal fishing. I highly encourage, if you've never been out there, to go experience for yourself. Again, you have a legitimate shot at, 11, 12, 13, 14 pound walleyes out on Green Bay. And that's why I go out there. And it's super, super fun. It's just one of those things that you can do in the spring where you leave here just like it is now. Northern Minnesota, I'll leave here. It looks like winter. I go down there. It's green. The walleyes are biting. It just like it, it's like you time warped into spring, and I love it. That's what I love about spring fishing in the Midwest. Another destination that I really want to get to, I'm jealous and sort of envious, but a lot of my buddies like Remington Moran, Nick Sakala, a bunch of my buds are out on Lake Erie right now. Hopefully next week, when we get into next week's podcast, I want to touch base with those guys to get their Erie experience, how it was, what they found, what baits were working, whether they were casting or trolling. I know just talking to Nick this morning, seemed like the fishing had been really good, but they've had a ton of rain out there, and now the runoff has churned up that water, just like we were talking about on the Rainy River. It's sort of churned up that water, and it's dirty, and guys are going back to trolling, which, we talk a lot about forward-facing sonar on this podcast, but trolling, guys don't overlook trolling techniques, not just for Lake Erie. But, it opened my mind up to it being out there with Marcus Qualm running big baits right in front of fish's face, even though we were casting to them and they just weren't having it. As soon as you trolled a big crankbait in front of them, like a gold digger or something like that, they reached out and just clobbered it. And so, trolling is still a huge part of spring fishing, but fishing all season long, especially for triggering fish, in certain applications. And out there where Nick's at on Green Bay, how dirty that water is, they're using really, really bright baits, kind of bumping fish right in the face to get them to bite, and literally like trolling baits right in front of fish's face to get them to hit the bait. And it's cool to me. That's what fishing's all about, triggering fish, figuring out the techniques that are working the best. It'd be interesting to see how the tournament ends up out there, the NWT, how these guys all do, whether they catch them trolling, whether they catch them casting, we'll see. And, I truly believe with this water being dirty, there's going to be two scenarios that unfold. One, either guys are going to have to run a really long distance to find clear water, or they're going to have to troll and really bump fish in the face to get them to go. And it'll be interesting to see how those guys do. I can't wait to talk to Rem and Nick on next week's podcast. We're going to break down what they did, how they did, what they used, and what baits were working best to put fish top side for the spring. So in addition, another destination that I love going down to that I've been seeing a ton of posts, and again, super jealous, is Red Wing down on the Mississippi River. Pool 3, Pool 4, people are doing incredibly well. I saw some big fish. I know early there wasn't a lot of runoff. There wasn't a lot of flow. People are saying the water, again, was really clear down there. I know when they had that Freeze Your Buns Off tournament or Freeze Your Bun Off tournament that they have every year, early spring, they said the bite was tough, but they found some fish that would go. I know a lot has changed since that time period, just with the warm-up. Now with this sort of runoff and this river coming up, it'll be interesting. I think the bites really were going to start to turn on down there as well. I know a few buddies of mine that I touched base with on the way back from vacation. I was talking, they were getting ready to head down to Red Wing. They were going to give me and clue me in on a few things that they had going on. So that's all I got for you. I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, let's chat a little bit more about spring fishing. I want to talk about, a few more things that I'm doing to put the ice fishing away and put the ice season behind me. And I'm going to take advantage of this week with it being crummy weather, especially into the weekend. Yes, I've got some family time as I get into Easter, but when I'm not doing family stuff, I am getting tackle ready. I am getting lines and rods re-rigged so that when the weather turns here, I'm ready to go. I'm not scrambling. I'm not fishing with old line. Let's get into that topic when we come back. I got more on Dialed In Angling when we return.
onX Fish is the best tool I have ever used for finding new lakes to target. Quickly filter lakes by species, then select trophy potential, high abundance, keeper potential, or high stocking effort to find the fish you are after in the size and the numbers you are trying to catch. Download from the App Store today to get research tools for the serious anglers and beginners alike, giving you the data to target the right lakes and the confidence to get there. Use tools like recent imagery, fishing hotspot data, or the best-in-class weather features that call out current wind, weather, barometer, moon phase, majors and minors, along with precip and more. onX Fish is a phenomenal tool both on and off the water for discovering new fishing opportunities, many of which you'd never known existed. Download onX Fish Midwest today, the app that is changing the game on ice and open water. Arneson's Rocky Point Resort in northern Minnesota offers a little something for everyone. Nestled on Lake of the Woods South Shore, it provides easy access to 14 remarkable reefs. Serious anglers know that Arneson's offers some of the best fishing, charter fishing, and small boat fishing options, all supported by the largest protected marina on the lake's South Shore. Accommodation selections range from 1 to 5 bedrooms. Equipped with all the modern conveniences, guests can enjoy a delightful dining experience and stunning lake views at the Rock Harbor Lodge, an on-site, full-service bar and restaurant. The two beaches provide hours of fun for the whole family. Whether you're seeking an idyllic fishing spot or a relaxing vacation, Arneson's Rocky Point has everything you need. Check them out at arnesonsresort.com.
Fish USA has partnered with Rapala to create a year-long series and a limited run of custom colored lures from Rapala, available only at fishusa.com. You're going to want to check them out. At least once a month, we'll drop a new bait from Rapala, custom color that you can only get at fishusa.com. All right, let's get into sort of gearing up for spring. This will be the last segment of the podcast. I'm trying to get through it. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Man, this cold is kicking my rear end, but I'm getting through the podcast. So thanks again for tuning in this week. I'm sitting up in my office right now, looking at all my fishing stuff, looking at all my open water stuff. I do have a few ice items still up here. I've got some rods that I'm putting away. I've got a few different Markhams that I'm charging batteries on and going to be unplugging those units and stowing them for winter or for summer so they're ready for next winter. But I want to get into gearing up for spring because that's a huge thing for me. not just as a guide, but as an angler, you're super excited, and it seems like spring can really hit you quickly like it did last week, even though it came and sort of went in the same week. This is the time period where I really have to buckle down and just tell myself, okay, not going to get too down in the dumps about the snow that's on the ground right now and the weather that's coming. I'm going to sort of put my nose to the grindstone, break out all of my tackle boxes from last year, reorganize them, pull out the rusty hooks, replace the things that are broken. Kind of when you're in the mix of things, I try to stay organized as an angler. I think a large part of being a good multi-species angler and someone who's prepared to change at a second's notice and to change gears, whether it's from changing gears from walleye fishing to pan fishing, from pan fishing to bass fishing, or just changing techniques, you have to be organized. And so what I like to do is I like to keep my tackle trays all organized. I write on my tackle trays. You can use a sort of label maker to label your trays, but keeping them organized with the right tackle in the right situation, whether it's jigging wraps, whether it's hair jigs, whether it's plastics, hooks, terminal tackle, components. I keep them very, very organized in all my boxes. But as organized as I am, there are certain times where you just cut off a lure, throw it in there. Sometimes it's not with the right color scheme or the right size. And so you got to go back and sort of organize that stuff. Throughout the season, I stay pretty organized when I'm doing it. But as you get towards fall, things start to be a mess. Like, I'm like every other angler. I sort of put things away and I try to put them away organized. Like I take my tackle trays and I actually put them in big totes and label the totes so I know where they're at, so they're ready for spring. Because there's certain trays that I don't need right now. Like if I'm heading up to the Rainy River, I'm not going to bring every tray that I have. I'm going to bring my jig trays. I'm going to bring some rip and wrap trays. I'll bring some jigging wrap trays, possibly some crankbaits. But, it's primarily going to be focused on jigs, some plastics, some Crush City, tackle systems that I have, and, bags of that stuff that I'm breaking out. So I always hit that first. But I go through every single tackle tray and I organize them, making sure that I cut off all the line. Some of the line that I cut, I didn't cut the knot. So I'm going through cutting all that stuff. I'm checking all the hooks on them. This time of year, especially on some of the crankbaits, if I am going to swap out some of those hooks, like VMC makes the Redline series hooks that are just phenomenal. If you've never tried their Redline series treble hooks or any of their Redline series hooks, they're ultra sharp, way better hookup percentage than a lot of other hooks out there. So if I'm swapping treble hooks, if I'm looking at hooks, this is the time of year I do it. And I go through each and every bait that's in the box to make sure that I'm not, missing a barb, or one of the hooks are broke off, or, the treble's bent out, or the bait's not running correctly. And so I go through that right now, every single tray after tray after tray, just making sure that everything's organized. I put that stuff aside. I put it back into the Rubbermaid, go to the next one. Same with the line. I go through the line that I had last year in the boat. A lot of times the line that you brought out in your boat, and I think all anglers will say that they've got line in their boat throughout the year. I take a look at that, because if it sat in my boat all year and it got wet and, sunshine hit it and it just doesn't look up to par, I just get rid of it. Fishing line is like the cheapest part of the whole fishing scenario. I love fresh line, a huge Suffolk guy. So, going through, making sure that, my spools are completely filled with braid or mono or whatever I'm doing. I'll go through not only the spools that I have, for leader material and that sort of thing in my boxes, but then I'll also break down all the spools that I have on my line, that are on my reels. And so, first of all, I broke out all the line that I had in my boat last year. There was some of it that I used for leader material, like fluorocarbons and stuff that, I used up most of it. So I got rid of that. I've got some fresh stuff in that box so that when I transfer that box to my boat, I know I have fresh line out there. that we're not using some old stuff from last year that might have, been in the sun, been in the weather, the water, whatever, kind of went through these warm, cold cycles nonstop. Anything that can impact your line whatsoever, just got rid of it. That box has completely fresh leader material. I've got some extra mono in there. I've got some extra braid in case we get a bad wind knot or something. I got to change out line on the go in the boat. I like to have extra line in that box. That's ready to go. Then I pull out every single one of my rods, which I'm in the process of doing right now. So, this morning woke up, there was some fresh snow on the ground. I'm going to shovel out. As soon as I'm done shoveling, I'm going to start pulling line off of spools. With my braided lines, I'm going to take a look at them because some of the braid that I put on last year was late last fall. As long as the braid looks good, I'm going to strip some off. And I usually pull out 30, 40, 50 feet just to see what it looks like. Make sure it's not too munched up underneath. Make sure it looks good. If the braid looks good, you can get away with using some of that braid for next year. Some of the braid that I put on last fall, I put my reels away, my rods away, upstairs, the play at my place and in my pole barn. It's pretty much stays consistent temperature, so I'm not worried about that stuff. However, all of the monofilament that was on my line, and then also my fluorocarbon leaders, all of those are getting changed regardless. And so I always pull that monofilament off there. I snip all the fluorocarbon leaders off my lines. And so that's my next step, is getting all of those lines put back together. I'm actually putting some jigs together, some plastics for the Rainy River, hoping to be up there next week. But when I go up there, I want to make sure that everything that I'm putting in my boat, or all the rods that I'm putting in my boat, everything is going to be organized and it's going to have fresh line on it. Nothing worse than getting to a spring destination and not having the right line, having old line on there or kinked line or whatever's going to screw up your fishing scenario. A lot of times when you're going up fishing for the weekend, you've only got a day and a half to fish. You don't want to be sitting there messing with line that's old and breaking off on a true giant. I mean, I think we've all been there. We've all been there in the sense where we've gotten to a fishing destination in the spring and realized that we didn't have half the stuff in the boat that we needed to. So by doing it now and getting organized now, that's going to help me when I hit my destination, that I not only have, all my tackle in order, all my line is fresh, everything's retied, fresh knots, fresh leaders, ready to go. And then lastly, throwing the net in the boat. I've done this several times where I've gotten completely organized, put everything together, put the cover on the boat because I didn't want to haul it down the road with the salt on the roads, and you peel your cover back and your net's not in there. So tools and net will be my next thing. And then I sort of just go over my checklist of everything that's needed to be in the boat, that I thought needed to be in the boat. And life. So that would be in the breakdown of life jackets, tools, nets, tackle, rods. Just going through that checklist is sort of my last thing before, I get ready to put the cover on and head down the highway. So hopefully next week's podcast, I want to talk a little bit about some of these spring destinations. Again, I'm going to circle back with some of my buddies that were out at Lake Erie. We're going to have some fishing reports for you next week. Hopefully I'll have a full report for you from the Rainy River if you got plans for heading up there. I hope everybody has a safe and happy Easter weekend. When you're not thinking about ham or going to church or doing family stuff, get your stuff organized because this weather is going to turn. It's not going to last long and spring will be here. So good luck fishing, everybody. As always, I'm Tony Roach, and this has been the Dialed In Angling Podcast.